All right, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And today we're going to be doing another deep dive. We love these. And today we're going to be talking about a public feud, a war of words between Donald Trump and Mark Cuban.
It all started with a comment that Mark Cuban made.
On The View.
On The View, that's right, yeah. That Trump was intimidated by intelligent women.
Right. So this was like classic Cuban, just like throwing a
jab.
Grenade out there.
Exactly.
So set the scene for us. I mean, we know who these two guys are, but just kind of give us like the backdrop to this whole back and forth.
Yeah, so you have Mark Cuban. He's an investor on Shark Tank. He's a billionaire.
Owns the Dallas Mavericks.
Owns the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah,
that's right. And he's also a pretty outspoken critic of Trump. And he was on The View, and he said, Trump is intimidated by strong, intelligent women. And then Trump, kind of known for his Twitter fingers exactly. He fires back on X, as it's known now, and just lets him have it.
Yeah, he calls him insecure.
Calls him
weak. Makes fun of his golf game. Like all this stuff. And it's like, I read through this and I was just like, man, this is like high school all over again.
Yeah.
Like, two guys just like going at it. And then Cuban like walked it back a little bit.
Yeah, so he kind of tried to clarify what he meant, but it's too late. The internet never forgets.
Right.
But it was interesting, to see that back and forth.
I mean, on one level, it's just like pure entertainment.
Yeah.
It's just like watching, I don't know, like a verbal wrestling match or something.
Yeah, right.
But I'm wondering, like, what's the deeper meaning here?
Yeah.
Like, what are these two guys really trying to accomplish by, having this public spat?
So I think for Trump, it's kind of classic Trump, right?
Yeah.
He's deflecting from the substance of the critique and just going on the attack. And he even in his response lists all of these prominent women in his life. And it's like almost as if he's trying to say like, oh, I can't be intimidated by women. Look at all these women
that I work with,
that I'm surrounded by. And it's like,
that I'm married to.
Right. But it's just so ironic.
Especially considering all the accusations against him.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms, but it just reeks of irony.
Totally.
But I think for Cuban, it's a little bit more complicated. Like, is he genuinely trying to make a point about Trump's views on women, or is this just like a calculated move to get under his skin and get some headlines?
He's a businessman.
Yeah, he's a businessman. He knows how to generate buzz.
Right, so it's like free advertising for him.
Exactly. Yeah. And, whether you love him or hate him, you're talking about him.
Yeah. Which is what he wants. So I guess the question is like, who's really winning this little game of theirs? Like, is it Trump by, getting all riled up and kind of dominating the conversation? Or is it Cuban by kind of poking the bear and then getting all this free publicity?
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure, but I think both of them are pretty good at playing the media game.
Right.
Using it to their advantage.
And I think that's actually something that we need to talk about more. Like the role of social media in all of this. Mm-hmm. Like this whole back and forth happened on X, formerly Twitter.
Right. And it just kind of shows how these platforms can amplify these conflicts.
Yeah.
And create these spectacles that we all get sucked into.
And it's like we're all just watching this reality show unfold.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into that rabbit hole, I want to kind of circle back to the content of this feud. Like, what are some of the key details that we should be paying attention to here?
So I think one of the most interesting things is how Trump tries to deflect Cuban's critique by highlighting the women in his life.
Yeah, that definitely stood out to me. Like, it's almost as if he's trying to say that he can't possibly be sexist because he knows and works with all these women.
Right. But as we mentioned before, a lot of those women have actually been critical of him.
Yeah. So it's kind of a flimsy defense when you really think about it.
Exactly. And it just goes to show how these figures try to control the narrative and present themselves in a certain light.
Even if it doesn't really match reality.
So
it's like this whole thing is just a big PR stunt.
In a way, yeah.
But I think there's also something deeper going on here. Like, this feud is tapping into some pretty big issues, like gender dynamics, power, the way women are treated in positions of authority.
And the way we deal with criticism.
Right.
Especially when it comes to these sensitive topics.
So it's like this whole thing is more than just a silly Twitter fight.
Yeah, it's a reflection of our current political climate.
And the way we communicate with each other. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. But there's one more piece of this puzzle that I want to explore. And that's the motivations. Like, what are these two men ultimately trying to achieve by engaging in this very public feud? What's in it for them?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I think it's one that we need to unpack carefully.
Yeah, because I think it gets to the heart of what's really going on here.
Absolutely. So let's dive into that.
Let's do it.
After a quick break.
We'll be right back. All right, so we're back. And, we were just talking about what Trump and Cuban are really trying to get out of this whole public feud.
Yeah, it's like, what's the end game here?
Right, because on the surface, it just seems like two guys with big egos going at it.
But there's always more to it than that.
Especially when you're dealing with people like Trump and Cuban.
Exactly. These are savvy guys. They know how to play the game.
So let's break it down. What do you think Trump is hoping to achieve here?
Well, I think part of it is just his personality, right? He loves the attention. He loves to fight back. He loves to be in the spotlight.
And he's really good at controlling the narrative.
Exactly. He's a master manipulator.
So by engaging in this feud with Cuban, he's keeping himself relevant. He's staying in the headlines.
And he's also deflecting from the substance of the critique.
Right. Instead of actually addressing Cuban's comment about being intimidated by intelligent women, he's just attacking Cuban personally.
Calling him names, making fun of his golf game.
It's classic Trump.
Yeah, and it's a tactic that works for him.
Because it gets people talking about him.
Exactly. Whether it's positive or negative attention, he doesn't really care as long as people are talking about him.
So in a way, Cuban's playing right into his hands.
Possibly, but I think Cuban's got his own agenda here too.
Like what?
Well, he's a businessman.
Yeah.
He's always looking for ways to promote himself and his businesses.
So this feud is basically free advertising for him.
Exactly. It keeps his name in the news, it gets people talking about him, and it reinforces his image as this kind of rebellious, outspoken figure.
Which is exactly how he wants to be seen.
Right. He's not afraid to take on the establishment, even someone like Trump.
So it's a win-win for both of them in a way.
Yeah. They're both getting something out of it.
But what about the rest of us?
That's the question, isn't it?
Like, are we just pawns in their game?
I think to some extent we are.
It's like we're all caught up in this reality show.
Yeah, and we're letting them dictate the terms of the conversation.
So what can we do about it?
I think the first step is just being aware of what's happening.
Like understanding that these guys are playing a game?
Exactly, and they're using us as the audience.
So we need to be more critical of the information we're consuming.
And we need to be more discerning about who we give our attention to.
Because at the end of the day, it's our attention that they're after.
Right. They need us to keep watching, to keep listening, to keep engaging with their content.
So if we want to change the game, we need to change our behavior.
Exactly. We need to be more thoughtful about how we spend our time and energy.
And we need to demand more from our leaders and from ourselves.
It's not enough to just sit back and watch the show.
We need to be active participants in shaping the world we want to live in.
And that starts with being informed, critical thinkers who are not afraid to challenge the status quo.
Well said. All right, so I think we've done a pretty good job of unpacking the motivations behind this Trump-Cuban feud.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
But there's one more thing I want to talk about.
What's that?
Cuban's initial comment about Trump being intimidated by intelligent women.
Ah, yes, the comment that started it all.
What do you make of that statement?
Well, I think it's a complex issue.
Yeah, it's not something that can be easily dismissed.
Exactly, and it's something that we need to examine more closely.
So let's do that.
Let's dive into the deeper implications of that comment and what it says about the way we view gender and power in our society.
Okay, so Cuban says Trump is intimidated by intelligent women. Is there any truth to that? I mean...
Well, it's hard to say for sure, right? We can't get inside Trump's head.
Right.
But I think it's an interesting question to consider.
Yeah, because it kind of gets at this bigger issue of how women are perceived and treated in positions of power.
Exactly. Like, are there still these underlying biases and assumptions that make it difficult for women to be seen as strong and competent leaders?
And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to regardless of their political beliefs.
Right. It's a universal experience in a way.
Like, we've all encountered those situations where we feel like we're not being taken seriously because of our gender.
Or where we have to work twice as hard to prove ourselves.
Exactly, and I think that's what makes Cuban's comment so resonant. It kind of taps into this shared experience of feeling underestimated or marginalized.
And it also challenges us to think about the ways in which those biases might manifest themselves even at the highest levels of power.
Like in the White House.
Exactly.
So regardless of whether you agree with Cuban's assessment of Trump, I think it's a conversation that's worth having.
Absolutely. It's important to talk about these issues and to challenge the status quo.
And to create a world where everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed.
Exactly, a world where people are judged on their merits and not on their gender or any other arbitrary characteristic.
Well said. All right, so I think we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the Trump-Cuban feud, the role of social media, the deeper implications of Cuban's comment, and what it all says about our current political climate.
And I think we've raised some important questions along the way.
Yeah, questions that I hope our listeners will continue to think about.
Absolutely. These are not easy questions to answer, but they're questions that we need to keep asking.
And talking about.
And debating.
Because that's how we move forward as a society.
Exactly, by engaging in these difficult conversations and by challenging each other to think critically and to be open to new perspectives.
Well said. All right, so that's going to do it for this deep dive. I want to thank you for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
As always. And I want to remind everyone to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about this Trump-Cuban feud? Is Cuban's comment about Trump being intimidated by intelligent women valid? Or is it just a cheap shot? Let us know. We love hearing from you guys.
And keep those conversations going.
Exactly. All right, till next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep diving deep.